Hello and welcome, all other Bobs out there. This this is the Bobverse live here, and I will allow everyone to introduce themselves, starting with the Warlock.
Yeah, at this point, I don't think I need an introduction. I'm just a shroll underneath the bridge. Comes out from time to time to make everyone's day a little bit more difficult.
All right, good, and Tom.
Yeah, so I'm Tom. I read, we were talking about this just before, but I read We Are Legion, We Are Bob 5 years ago, but it is still a book that I was looking through some like old notes that I had, and even I tried to like find the summary. I was like, I remember most of this. So this is a series that is I super high praise for, and I'm excited to talk about it because when I read this, I was not on BookTube. So it's kind of nice to go back to a series that I read pre-BookTube and talk about it a little bit.
And I am Chaz from Bookish Chaz, and I've read all 5 of the Bobverse books so far, and love it. So I'm definitely a fan. I did the audiobooks. I've not read the physical copies, but audiobook is definitely a good experience. Yeah.
I did it on the audiobook as well. And yeah, because people are like, this might be one of the best, narrators out there, and like his cadences and the way he'll go back and forth, and just I thought that was like thinking to myself, because he's basically at don't want to go too far in the future here, but he's basically talking to himself, in this, and I just love how a narrator can just be like, all right, like this is happening. I'm not weird. Like, he just pulls it off brilliantly.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Ray Porter is great. I don't know if anybody's listened to him do any other stuff, but I've had him in a couple other audiobooks, and he's great, and he's like top notch for me for sure.
What would be something we might have heard of?
So actually the only other ones I've listened to him that I know of off the top of my head are other Dennis E. Taylor books. So he did what's it called? I could find it, but it's another like sci-fi kind of story Dennis E. Taylor did, but it's that same kind of humor comedy thing that it's just like a perfect marriage, like perfect audiobook narrator with the kind of stuff that Taylor's writing.
So here's a deep cut for you. Ray Porter did the voice for Darkseid in the Snyder Cut.
Oh,
no kidding. Okay.
Wow,
that is sweet.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's been a big name for a while, or if like this helped him get that role, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, nice background there, Chaz.
Thank you. I've been working on adding that. I meant to do it before the stream, but I got it in.
So. You got it in there. But yeah, I love the beginning of this this book, because it's just like because it's Robert Bob Johansson, right? And I don't know, he sold a tech company or something to that effect. And I mean, I don't know if they ever actually say how much money he made.
A lot.
But it was
a lot.
It was definitely in the millions for sure.
Enough to buy him a ticket for cryogenics when he dies.
Yeah. I just love that.
Damn shame he had to cash that in so fast, though.
Right.
I mean, and that's been around for a while now. I mean, I remember being a kid and like hearing what was it? Ted Williams? Ted Williams was like freezing his head,
that's the Walt Disney.
Walt Disney.
The Walt Disney theory that he's got a frozen head hidden in Disney World, somewhere that they can bring him back someday.
I don't know. Magic Kingdoms, where all the magic starts.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely something. And I can remember watching. It might have been on like the Discovery Channel or something. But when I was a kid, of like them, how it would work, and like they are like as soon as you die, they like put you in the ice and like try to keep blood circulation. So all the crazy stuff. So it's definitely an idea that's been played with before, but I definitely like the way it's done in this book for sure.
Yeah, it was quite clever, and especially because he didn't get what he paid for, right? He paid for cryogenics, and the church said, "Nah, no, we're not doing that anymore." So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that was so crazy because I love how he's going to a science convention or I don't know if it's a Comic-Con, but and they, I mean, we should have seen it coming, right? What would they get, a Van Noy probe? Like the
yeah,
whole premise was like them debating about this at the beginning of the book and why it would work and it wouldn't work. And I'm just like, I mean, like maybe I'm just putting myself in the mode of go along for the ride because I wasn't like, why are they talking so much about this one certain thing in this sci-fi book? Yeah, like,
Yeah.
right.
and then
Almost like it was a foreshadowing or something.
almost like they were foreshadowing, right? Yeah, but I loved, of course, classic trope. It's like he hits the lottery with selling his, selling his stuff, walks out in the middle of the road and gets boom hit by a car, and I'm like, okay, now the real story is starting. Okay, because I tried to stay away from most of this. I don't know if did you guys know much about the book when
Not a
you
lot.
guys came into it?
Nope, no
No.
idea. I think
No.
I think I heard about it on a podcast or something, and was like, sounds good to me, and kind of jumped in from there. Yeah, so I knew basically next to nothing about it.
I
Yeah,
was
one of my
talking.
booktube buddies turned me on to it, and he just kept raving about it and raving about it. He's like, "Chaz, you'll love this. You'll love this." I'm like, "Okay."
I was talking to a coworker about Expeditionary Force, and he was like, "Oh, you like
Mm.
sci-fi stuff? Oh, well, I've been reading this one about a guy who gets cloned, and maybe you'd be up your alley." And well, the rest is history.
Yeah, like what, and it is somehow connected to Expeditionary Forces universe somehow. Because I kept anytime once I kind of got into the book and I was like, all right, I'm finishing up. I'll start looking up some stuff and theory, a little bit of theories and stuff, and that kept popping up that somehow they're linked. I don't know if the authors just are friends or something.
I think that Expeditionary Force is a fiction in the book. Like it's a fictional story in this story, and he was a fan
Oh,
of it.
really?
I
Oh,
think
okay, interesting.
I haven't
I did
gotten
not
far
catch
enough for Skippy to get referenced, but I hear that Skippy gets referenced.
Ah,
But yeah, like the only things I knew were, it's an AI that gets shot off into space, and I was like, okay, that's cool. I don't need to hear anything else, And then when I got into it, I just love those concepts of like, well, how are we going to continue the human race on? Is it going to be robots? Is it going to be colony ships? And I knew it all along that Brazil were the bad guys. I've been trying to tell everybody this for years. I'm just like, watch out for Brazil. Like I don't know, like that was a different one. Australia and Brazil are the bad guys. You don't hear that in very many sci-fi.
no, you really
Like
don't. Yeah,
I'm just like, okay, I could dig us go in a different direction instead of China, Russia, the UK. It's like no one ever talks about Brazil, but I did love their AI. I did.
yeah, yeah. And what's cool about this? What's cool about Bob is he's an artificially translated human intelligence. So everything about him that is human is still there except his body. And I just think that's a really cool concept.
Yeah, like a brain clone instead of
Yeah,
just building
exactly.
it from scratch.
Yeah.
It comes with its ups and downs, I suppose. He's walking down the street, gets hit by a car, and wakes up in a formless void.
Right. I love what John's saying here. He's just giving us grief over our backgrounds. Yeah, I love it. I get the green screen, man. It's cool.
No, but like I love that concept. Like, and that's, I think that was the strongest part of the books is like the way he works like concepts that if you're a science nerd or whatever, you think about these concepts from time to time, and the way that they put those in there. And I thought it was cool to have, like, when he wakes up and they're like, hey, and he's like, oh, he feels okay. He's like, I feel pretty good, like whatever they fixed me up, however they fixed me up, this is good.
Right.
And then he wants to start moving, and just the way he explains, like, he's even though this book is pretty dang short, like his descriptions on feelings that Bob has because he doesn't really have a body, he's trying to describe them to you as though a person who's never done that before. And I thought that was really, really good.
I mean, he basically has to build the thing whole cloth. Like, he's building his body in the void, and then like literally it's his imagination and his meticulousness that forms everything around it. It's amazing that he was able to do any of that stuff, because like the book itself explicitly tells you that the vast majority of the AIs basically go crazy because they can't really do that. And when you clone a person, they're expecting a certain kind of sensory feedback.
Right.
Yeah. What did you think about, especially Tom, being a strong man yourself? How crazy would that be to wake up and just not have your body? That would be.
Yeah, who even knows? It almost so I can actually remember reading this, and it reminded me of two things. Like this specific section when he's waking up, it reminded me of slight spoiler for Ender's Game, I guess. But when Ender first goes into outer space, he's like the first one to like figure out how to like reorient himself in space. And for whatever reason, I made a connection with that here, because like most of the AI and whatever, they like freak out, they can't do it or whatever. So I don't know why I connected that with Ender's Game, but then it also reminded me of like being trapped like in like a night terror or something, where like you want to move but you can't. And so those were like the two
sleep
things
paralysis.
Where like you're trying to move and you can't like really do anything, but your mind's all there. Those are the two things that I kind of thought of when I was reading that part in particular.
That's a good. I actually didn't make that connection until you just said it. I'm like,
I didn't either.
Kind of feel like that. That would be kind of.
Yeah, which is obviously terrifying. That's why they call them night terrors, right?
I mean, to add a little bit more nightmare fuel for everybody, there is a actual physical disability or ailment or whatever you want to call it that would simulate this locked in syndrome.
Oh, I've heard. I don't know anything about it, but I've heard. I've heard it.
But you're not really fixing that. It's like usually a stroke on like the brain stem of some sort. And all the higher functions are there. It's just nothing works now. Like you got maybe your eyes.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
thanks.
That tug. Yeah, you were right to call that nightmare fuel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I just love that, like, when Bob wakes up and I think it's because I think the the author is leaning on, like, okay, he was a science fiction nerd, so that's why he's not gonna freak out, because he wants to experience some of this cool stuff. Because I think it's 2133, right? So it's a little over,
106 years ago,
116 years from the time the book was supposed to take place, or something like that. And so they play up that whole thing, and because they start off with like 13 AIs, and I love the way they describe, like, each AI, they wake them up, and then it's a task. Like, there is like one AI that controls all of the trash collection or something like that, and I'm like, I could see that kind of future, like, where we're at right now. I could see them making like super powerful AIs to do one specific job. But then we just gotta hope they don't, grow a personality on us. And
let's not do it like Brazil does it here, because the big problem with the way they did it, they're basically creating fully thinking, personalities and whatnot there from dead brains, and then treating them like programs.
Right.
That I can tell you right now, I would want to do exactly what Bob ends up doing to him. Like, screw these assholes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and what did you guys think about, like, basically how they got to this point? Was over the course of like 120 years, they had what, like they talked about how they had like a religious take over the government, then an atheist take over the government, and then it's back to a religious takeover, and then they're living in some kind of like theocracy or whatever, where you like everyone is, it's like the classic trope where you're like Big Brother's watching, so they don't even like, oh yes, the faith is the best, the greatest guys ever.
Right.
Yeah.
Bob, read this, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, I always find it interesting. We don't spend like too much time getting into like the nitty and gritty bits of like the political like takeovers that happen back and forth and everything. But
Yeah.
I do think the Where We Land is very much a vehicle to have some interesting conversations about like sentience and like what is a person and those kinds of things. And so I don't know. I liked it. I think it's interesting, and I do think it's funny how you know it went back and forth and everything. It's just like a slight humor in a somewhat dark situation for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too. I like that it doesn't focus so heavily on the politics that you don't get to have fun. You know, because it's really intended to be just a nerdy action adventure, space exploration with some satire mixed in there, just so that the politics stuff is there, but they don't dwell on it. Yeah, that's
they definitely do give you enough time or the character enough time to kind of flesh out and come to terms with what he is, because that does play a pretty big role in the beginning aspects of it. Like Bob's questioning, and well, he knows. The one thing I really do love is that, like a mind like Bob's mind and whatnot, there he comes to the conclusion that he's not the original Bob. It's the original Bob's dead. You know, he's Bob 2.0, and you know, so he's not anchored to, am I that flesh and bone, flesh and blood person? It's like, am I a person? What exactly am I? I think they even ask doesn't he ask himself? It's because it's been a minute since I've read it, but doesn't he ask himself if he has like a soul or something? And, you know, he's like, what is the nature of what I am? You know, like, and I think asking those questions kind of answers the question themselves. Like the act of asking them kind of, you know, says a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like what was it, Descartes? I think, therefore I am. If you can think about that question, I think that kind of validates your existence right there. Kind of like what you're saying. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think a cool kind of aspect, and I don't know why, I just haven't seen this in many books, but like there is like no public internet. You have to get everything from the library.
Right.
I'm just like, okay, I haven't heard that one before, but like I like how Bob in the future continues to call whenever they back anything up, or instead of calling it storage, he calls it the libraries. Like I have to look into the libraries, and I was like, I thought that was kind of cool. Like, you know, if we did have an AI that went out into the stars, like they would still, you know, call things what we called them, you know.
Well, he was a programmer, keep in mind. And when you're programming software and whatnot there, one thing that you lean on heavily are software libraries, which are these large catalogs of prefabbed programs that you could argue that it's like sort of firmware, you know, or something that will allow the software to communicate with other pieces of software more efficiently.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that he would continue to say and call it that. But that was always one of the cooler aspects of it, because I was like, oh, well, this guy's a programmer. He's building, you know, he's programming out this stuff. And when they gave him the Van Neumann probe and whatnot there, all he needed was raw resources. And he's upgrading the living shit out of that thing as soon as he can.
Right.
You know, because they don't really give him good, like remember, this is like a theocracy and whatnot. They're not giving him good tech. They don't really want him to improve himself. They don't. I mean, hell, they at one point, don't they? Like, he's got some kind of weird emotion suppressors or something, like in his programming. That he's just like, yeah, we're getting rid of that shit.
Yeah, he had a turn off code.
Yeah.
that he
Yeah.
Well, that
found.
too, the kill switch that he disables.
Or the make you obedient code or whatever. It actually didn't. Yeah.
Well, and that right there, that's a real thing that we're afraid of in real world AI. By the way, as soon as the AI gets to a point where it can actually edit and write its own code,
Yeah.
like it's hands off at that point for us. We don't really have control over that thing.
If you guys end up reading the Murderbot series, they kind of explore something like that with Murderbot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely a real thing. And I mean, the turning off the emotions and stuff is probably helpful too, because, you know, his family's been dead how many years now? Like everybody that he knew is mostly gone.
Well, and it's like so Tom, like when we're all fantasy geeks and nerds here and stuff. So he really, like, as soon as they said, "Oh yeah, we're making you into a Van Noy probe," he was like, "I'm in." Like, say less. Like, like, is that something, like, did that kind of click with you? Is that something that you're like, I could see, that, like,
oh
that
yeah,
would
I think that's one thing I actually really liked about this book was it was something that, like, if I were put in that situation, it's the same kind of thing that I would have done. Like, I think one of the things that, like, breaks my heart in the world today is that I'll never get to go and explore space because we're just not there. We're just not there. Yeah, exactly. We're just not there technologically yet. And it's like, man, wouldn't it be great if I could, like, take a quick afternoon trip to, like, Jupiter and just, like, see what it's like out there and then, like, hop back, like, how awesome that would be. So, like, when we get to the actual Van Neumann probe part of this and the exploration and building ourselves out and getting to do and explore all these things, right up my alley as far as, like, that technology stuff goes, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what were you guys' thoughts when it's like, oh, they kind of alluded to it in the first, little bit of the book, and then it's like, oh, what you've always wanted to know about, you can be.
Yeah.
The stuff dreams are made of, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this book, like, really talks to that, like, adventurer spirit a little bit. Once you get, because I'll be honest, when I was reading this book, I was like, oh, we're not even going to get to the Van Neumann probe part until, like, that's going to be like because it was so short. I was like, we're not even going to really get into, like, the meat and potatoes of this until, like, the end of the book. And so when it happens much earlier on than I thought, I was kind of like, oh, heck yeah, we're getting into, like, what I wanted this to be rather quickly. And so I was super, super down for all of that.
Like, we all kind of, like, anyone with that kind of adventurer spirit, we're all kind of living our own personal tragedies right now because we are, it's too late to explore the world. It's too early to explore the stars. All we have is exploring our imaginations. That's all we really got. And God bless that. It'd be a boring ass world without that.
Well, okay. I've always had this thought. Now, this is since we're in this kind of conversation, it's like, I feel as though we're at the point where we can imagine anything that is going to happen, but we just don't know how to do it yet. Whereas I feel like people 200, 300 years ago, they couldn't even imagine. Like, I just don't think that there's that kind of gap anymore. I don't know what, like, I don't think people from 1600 were thinking about, cars and thinking about, like, actual spaceships and stuff like that. Whereas, like, we have so many sci-fi movies. Like, I think we have thought about all that's going to happen. We just can't get there. I don't know.
I disagree. I see. You're falling into a hole where you're assuming we've already conceptualized everything imaginable. Like we've only conceptualized things that we've currently imagined.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't know the unknowns. Like just like back in the 1300s, they're not conceptualizing spacecraft and alien races and things like that. What things in 150 years have we not conceptualized yet? We don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think I'm more with Warlock a little bit, where it, you can only imagine, like, so I actually just recently read a sci-fi book from 1909. It's called The Machine Stops, or When the Machine Stops, one of those two. And so it's, over 100 years old at this point. And you wouldn't think that a book from 100 years over 100 years ago would have basically an autonomous civilization where AI is taking care of everything, but it's in that book from over 100 years ago. And
John Carter of Mars. I think that was
yeah,
from
that's
the
another
1900s.
super. Yeah, and so there's always going to be things I think we can push those boundaries of like where we can go, because we're always going to be making new discoveries of things.
Right.
Like, and as those things happen more and more and more, I think, we push those limits for sure. Because there will be some kind of scientific breakthrough probably in the next 25 years that, makes us rethink so much that we know. And I'm just going off of that's been like the history of discovery, right? We discover something monumental continuously and redefine everything. And I don't think we're at the end of that bridge yet. I guess at some point, technically, you have to figure out everything, but I don't think we're there yet,
Yeah, I don't know that we are. Like, I see where you're coming from, JR, but I tend to lean more toward Warlock and Tom too. Like, I mean, we
I hope that to be the case for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, like a lot of sci-fi does play it safe. Like you think about stuff like The Expanse and stuff like that. That's pretty close to home, maybe 100 years out from where we're at now, 200 years, something like that. Is still kind of very similar to the technology we're using now. So a lot of sci-fi like that, like, people call it popcorn sci-fi, I guess, whatever, plays it pretty safe. But then you got other stuff, like there's some, I haven't read any of Tchaikovsky's stuff yet, but I've heard that he's pretty out there in terms of imagining the future, and it doesn't look a lot like we typically think about. That's what I've been told. I have not read Tchaikovsky yet, but I'm
I've heard it's really good. I just haven't got into him quite yet.
Yeah. And I don't know about Scalzi. I haven't read the Old Man's War series or anything like that, but it feels to me like a lot of sci-fi plays things safe. And
well, I think you're right. I think they want to keep it to where you can at least kind of understand it, where you don't feel like you're getting lectured.
Right.
Maybe the fantasy version of that would be Eaters of the Dead. Some people feel like that's more of a textbook reading.
Right. That's Michael Crichton.
Yeah, it's it was the movie The 13th Ward they made after it. But yeah, it's basically the first like 150 pages is actual Ivan Fodlan's journal, and then Crichton comes in and says Beowulf. From there, and so but the way he writes it like it's a journal, so it's kind of so it's a little dry, not as much on the action descriptions.
I think right now we're so heavily focused on AI, everything we read about AI this, AI that. But is there something more than AI? There very well may be. And we just haven't gone there yet, So I don't know.
We gotta siphon power off from another dimension. That's what we gotta do.
Right.
So that's funny you say that. Stuff like that is definitely going to be power is like actual like power to get into like a processor and stuff is like going to be like I've heard stories of Microsoft buying old decommissioned power plants to spin back online to power their data stuff to, play with all kinds of models and stuff. So all that kind of stuff of like there is stuff coming, like quantum computing is going to be like a big thing, I think, in the future. And there will be, like you said, there's stuff we don't know. But I will say how we got onto this tangent, JR, I do think we are in a stale period of technology a little bit. You have things like Moore's Law slowly dying. You have companies that don't really feel like, at least on the consumer side, they're pushing the envelope like they could be.
Yeah.
If you look at an AMD, NVIDIA, and Intel, they're not pushing it, and like specifically on the consumer market, they're not pushing technology the way that things were happening, 15 years ago. Yeah. If you go even further,
late 80s, early 90s. I mean, and me and Nathan have talked about this. Like, it doesn't feel like you said, no companies are pushing the envelope and willing to lose money on a weird gadget that, like, it used to be the norm. It used to be like every week you see a commercial for a weird new type of device.
Yeah. A lot of stuff has come into the same kind of pipeline because, people will argue how different Android is from iOS, but they're so close to being the same thing at this point that we're it's all coming down the same highway at this point. That's just they're feeding in from like opposite sides of the road. And at some point, something will happen where there's a big interruption, I think, but we're not there yet. And it'll be something, who knows what it'll be. It could be AI, it could be something else, it could be something that something the government's working on that nobody will know about for 15 years that then finally trickles down to the consumer market and we all learn about it.
I want my damn singularity. I want my singularity and I want it now.
Right.
The last one we had was the crash at Roswell, and that's where we got all this new technology that we got from the last 50
there you
years.
go.
So
Right.
We need another crash, is what we need.
And I need to go work at Right Pat.
Who knows what new ending technology from aliens we haven't met yet that will happen? Who knows, right?
Well,
hey, they can keep their teleporters though. I ain't getting in that shit.
Right. Oh yeah, me either. I don't do that beam me up Scotty stuff with me. I like keeping my pieces together. I'm just saying. Well, that's a reality.
See, that's why I'm like Ron Swanson. I just bury all my gold in the backyard. I don't have to worry about that.
The stock market's going to stabilize here soon, I hope, because I think that the stock market is actively pricing Trump's crazy shit into the actual price. It's getting priced in, so it'll stabilize.
Yeah, maybe so.
I like.
Or we'll have another crash. How do you guys feel about depressions?
Right.
Bad.
Very bad. But I could see it coming.
But I love how like the different AIs, they still like that. Eventually, we learn that like everybody stole a little bit of technology from everybody, but they do go different kind of routes. Like the Brazil went heavy military. Like they're just like, we're using a military general, like I think Nathan said like a dead general or something like that was like the thing for that. So all the ships were heavily loaded with like different types of missiles. And that's one thing I did like. Again, I like a lot of the concepts in here, and it's Bob doesn't like explosives. Like at the very beginning, he's like, I just want to be smarter and more maneuverable at the beginning. Did you guys think like I was thinking, like, oh yeah, he's going to be building all these crazy weapons at the beginning of the thing, but
I didn't actually think that. I thought when we're learning about the different like concepts that some of the probes go down is like, it reminded me of a video game where you go down like a specific tech tree. That's like, that's kind of where you end up putting all your stuff into. So like, it made me think of like Civilization. I don't know if you guys have ever played that, but like, you can go heavy into like an economy victory or a cultural victory, all these different like branches. And I think that's what I got out of it, where it was just like, if we push this way, what would happen to this kind of AI versus if we push in another way. I guess when he first gets to space, I didn't even like, for me, it was all about like exploration. So I never even thought about like defense and like having to like, which is maybe a little naive, and I wouldn't have lasted very long as a probe. But
well, I think Bob was in the same boat though. Like I think that all these harken back to the original Human that was the template. Bob, by and large, was a creative, a thinker. He's the software engineer. Engineering scientist. Everything is about exploration, learning new things, and whatnot there. And I think it was a bit of a shock to his system when the other militaristic probes started to basically attack him and everything. Because obviously those old feuds, they got to go out into the stars with the probes, because all of that matters, guys. All of that totally matters. Who hates who and who has the resources totally matters. But so he gets a little bit of a shock to the system there when that happens, and he's got to kind of reassess things and start to oh, I guess I got to build out the bigger bomb to deal with this bullshit.
Mhm.
And that's how I would feel about it. I wouldn't want to deal with it either. I'd rather just go, find life and
Right.
do that stuff.
Like, oh, we're really wasting our time with this. Oh, come on.
I think Chaz, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think they brought that up multiple times where he's like, when he's interacted with Brazil and he's like, bro, like there's nothing out, like you don't have to do it. We must kill you. Yeah, like
Right? Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
They did actually, I think. Yeah.
yeah. I just thought that was crazy to me. He's like he tried to reason with them on multiple occasions, but
Yeah.
like I guess that thing is just stuck. And I think at one point he even says like when he was trying to go back to Earth, he's like, there might not even be an Earth to go back to. What happens then? What are you going to do after that?
Where are your loyalties when your nation's gone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess that, I mean, that's, and like I said, there's like, he never stays, he hits you with a lot of different concepts, but he never stays on them too long to where they get like Chaz was saying, it doesn't bog you down with the theocracy stuff at the beginning. And then it's like, are you, and then, the question of, oh, like, if you don't have a body, how are you going to react? And then we go out to the stars, like, are we still going to be battling out in the stars? But like, it doesn't, ever bog you down too much. But then like when they come back to Earth and they're just trying, and they're trying to negotiate with Earth. And then was it Brazil or was it Australia that like nuked the world?
Ooh, been too long for me to remember that.
Yeah,
kind of in the same boat.
Yeah, I want to say that they eventually blamed Brazil. I want to say that they probably blamed Brazil for that. But yeah, it's like what our population went down to like 15 million. And then you got and it's actually pretty predictable, but it was still fun to hear all of them arguing on who should be the ones on the ships. That was actually really a long section.
That was Riker, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he was I don't know if he was British, but like he sounded British, like he was making himself sound British. But yeah, like if you guys want to talk about like that concept of like who should get off the planet, and then like, and it's almost like even though Bob's an AI, he's still like his brain hurts like hearing all was like something like 20 different factions like saying why we should go, and he's just like
Well, that's just humanity right there, bleeding through. Like ultimately, he's digital and everything, but he's still like built off of the human template. Like that mind is still, still grew up in whatever nondescript town USA, dealt with all the human political bullshit and everything, and it doesn't matter if you're silicon or flesh, that shit can get frustrating and annoying.
Right.
Nobody got time for that shit.
Yeah, but like I like the like Bob has to go down different avenues, and if you like science, it's pretty cool because he's arguing with himself. But then also, like, if you're into this kind of stuff, I through the whole time I was thinking like what I thought the best strategy was. They're like, oh, do we build more of us? So then once there's a lot of us, we can build more, or do we focus on building these ships to get these people off because an ice age is coming? I thought that was like a cool concept, and I think he was like doing fan service to people who like strategy games and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I could see
big
that. Totally,
big strategy game vibes. It reminds me of what is it, like Age of Empires, where it's like, do I worry about producing more villagers so I can build more things, or do I just like do like you have to like micromanage all those different elements of everything, and also with the worrying about who gets off the planet and everything, it reminded me a little bit of what's that really bad end of the world movie? Is it 2012 or something where they secretly build ships in like the Himalaya mountains or something? But they're only gonna
that was 2012.
And it's like, but they're only gonna like save like a couple thousand people when it's like they have the ability to do it all. I don't know. I remember thinking about that
Yeah.
when when that part was going on. Or it's just like, of
Yeah,
course this is
yeah,
what's
thank-
happening. Of course we're going to be awful.
Yeah, how many casualties do we want to plan for, and how many people can we realistically save and things like that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it was crazy because we kept, it was almost like there was multiple books going on because you had multiple Bobs. So they
Yeah.
went out, because I was thinking there was like 3 different stories going on at once. I think you had the Soul story, then
which
you
is
had
Riker and Homer, right?
yeah, and then you had the story where they went to the original location they were supposed to go to, I thought, and that's where they were fighting the Brazilians out there. And then there was another, and then the one that I think was the main story was the one where they found the primitive people on the planet.
And that was the OG Bob, I believe. The
Yes.
original
Yeah,
Bob was there.
was that Epsilon Aridne?
Yes,
That sounds right.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was Epsilon Aridne. Yeah, that was original Bob. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It
Original
definitely-
Bob is with that's the Deltans.
Yeah,
Delta.
right.
Delta
Yes.
Aridne, because that's where you got the name Deltans from. It was Delta Aridne.
Oh, that's right.
There we go. Yeah,
Delta
yeah,
Aridne.
yeah.
Yeah,
With
you're
Delta,
right.
yep.
You're right. My bad.
Epsilon, I think, was the hub. Isn't that where Bill was? Bill was the scientist, or the one that took Bob's scientific mind and like took that up to 11, right? He was the one who was developing out all the cool tech and then like beaming it out. And I loved how the speed of light was a limiting factor here. He was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, the Bobs that I sent out in that direction, they'll get that in like 14 years.
Mhm.
And then every time that they started getting it, like the instructions were there to build out like their real-time communication device and whatnot there, because like the first gens, they didn't have that. And I thought that was cool as hell. And
Yeah.
like he had that little trick Bill did or something where he's like, yeah, just follow out the instructions to a T, and then halfway through he like walks into their like AI world, and he's like, yeah, we figured this out too.
Yeah.
And then now they can all go to that big old hub world and stuff.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
I gotta reread these again. They're just so
Yeah, but yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. Where that they created their own little. Everyone had a VR, and like that was, I think that was one thing that he was using to differentiate them for you. Where it's like, oh, I'm sitting here with the jungle behind me, and it's like, oh, okay, he's the guy with the jungle behind. Yeah, like that's the Bob with the jungle behind him.
Yeah, it's an interesting
the
concept.
VRs
for
were
sure.
cool. I mean, I loved how Bob like did his VR. He's got his coffee, and he even went so far as to simulate the effect of caffeine and just all this quirky stuff. But it made him feel more real. So yeah.
That hub world that they created and everything. Like Bill has so much processing power behind that, horsepower and everything that I don't know if they could all individually do this, but I believe that at the very least that hub area has like a fully developed, fully realized virtual Earth with like everything down to like the physics engine and all that other crap. And I always thought that was cool as hell. Like, cause I remember something to do with the Australian that he found. Like he had enough, kindness and everything to help out that AI. And he was like, hey, we got you, man. We're gonna build you a body, and we're gonna get you set up.
Yeah.
What
they end up doing with him, I forget.
Well,
I know they quarantined him
fishing
off
or something. Like they left him alone in like a world, and he's just out on a boat like fishing.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines.
Yeah. I think he's just sailing around an artificial ocean.
Because he was a sailor. That's yeah.
And like that right there was a great, I think, expression of just the type of person that Bob was. Because again, like they're enemies, but he doesn't give a shit. He's like, like I see a person in trouble here, and as long as you're not try to blow me up, man, I'm going to help you out.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a big thing, a deviation in this book from pretty much the standard of all other science fiction books. When they do run into the Deltons, he's like, at first he's doing the whole thing, right? Look,
Prime
don't
directive.
touch, don't mess with. We don't mess with primitive beings. Like that's like I don't know if that was from Star Trek or
Yeah.
The
whoever
Prime Directive. Yeah.
yeah, who invented that? But like, and then you have these like grilloids, the gorilla-like beings that come and start murking them, and and Bob's sitting up there. He's like, and what's the guy's name? Archimedes is what he named him or whatever.
Archimedes.
Yeah, right.
And he's like, he starts to see him using tools and stuff, and he's like, man, I can't let these guys go extinct. He's like, and then he jumps in and uses one of like the busters, I think is what they call them, like the little iron balls to like slam into him.
Yeah.
And like, what did you guys think about that? Did you think he was going to interfere, or did you think it was kind of going to be like that? Well, let's do it around the edges type deal and not actually really intervene.
I couldn't help. If I were in his shoes, I couldn't help myself. I'd have to interfere. Like, sure, that technically that's not what you're supposed to do, but I mean, hell, our own nature conservationists do it all the time, man. I've seen plenty of them saving the damn turtles and all this other stuff, making sure that nature isn't running its course. And like, we're at this point, we're at a point where I don't know. It's going to sound arrogant of me, but like, it's our prerogative to do that. Like we're advanced enough to where we can completely reshape our damn world. We're setting up massive dams, rediverting whole rivers and stuff and whatnot there. I don't know, besides going into like blasphemous like theology and saying at this point we're the closest thing to gods there are until we find something to that fits the bill better. So like, I'm not worried about it.
Are you saying we're the Bob?
We are the Bob.
The Bob. I love how his little side. What the heck is it Homer or his side down
Homer
there?
Beyond Soul. Remember, he's the one that got hacked or whatever.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Guppy?
Guppy, yeah. Guppy's always
more clone.
He's like, this is a bad idea. I'm telling you. And he's like, I can't not help these people. And then after he starts he drops off a bunch of flint or whatever, and then blows up one of the grilloids, and then you just see a couple pages later, Guppy's like, oh, see that over there? And he's like, it's a piece of the metal, and they built fires around it, and he goes, that's an altar, isn't it? He goes,
they're worshiping you.
Yeah. And then they start calling him the Bob.
The Bob. Yes.
I'm like, you are God now, Bob. Good job.
The moment that solidifies it was when he basically nuked the entire outfit of the damn grilloids or whatnot. He drops. I don't think it's a nuke, but it was something similar to a nuke, like a Moab or something. He dropped a bomb. It blew them to hell, and the Deltans saw it, and they saw the aftermath and whatnot. And I don't remember if it was the High Council or Archimedes that basically said, "Did you do that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I had to. I'm sorry. I had to happen." And they're like, "You need to leave." And then later on, that's when it became the Bob. Because to a primitive race, that would be a god level power.
Yeah.
Again, like he just reshaped their planet.
Yeah. Well, there's just sometimes. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying there's sometimes, like you were saying earlier, Nathan, that you just can't not intervene. Like I know, Bob based his whole thing on the Prime Directive from Star Trek, but I mean, you see some of the newer Star Trek movies, they clearly violate the Prime Directive.
Yeah. I don't know if we need to let a mid show from the 60s dictate the how we interact with intelligent species.
I love that.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know.
I mean, Stargate's better, and they're always fucking with shit.
Yeah.
I must say I was more of a Trek guy than a Wars guy. So growing up,
I've always been a Wars guy, but I enjoy Star Trek. I was always a next gen guy, next generation.
all right.
Yeah.
I'll crap all over Star Trek if I'm not there, but Star Trek and Star Wars, that Star Trek is science fiction.
Yeah.
Star Wars is science fantasy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they're it's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
You know, no one
They're
else
space
knows.
wizards.
Yeah, that's literally what they are, man.
Yeah.
Well, there were some hard rules on that Lucas followed. Now that Disney has it, there are no rules, but I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole different can of
Rules?
worms.
I think at this point, Kathleen Kennedy, I think she just thinks she's a basketball player. She's like, "I'll just throw stuff. Well, it'll work. I promise."
Hey, man, if you miss the net, is it still nothing but net?
Bricks. No, but like with this, like I think Archimedes was like the best character. Like at the beginning, he was pretty dry, but then like he started gathering a little bit of humor towards the end when Bob would be like, "Hey, can you tell this old medicine lady to do something?" And he's like, "Do you want me to tell her to do something? She's been doing this for 30." Like he's like, "Oh, she might kill me." Like
That was my favorite storyline too. The Deltons definitely captivated me the most because like that's the exploration part to me that like is the like not that the other stuff isn't important, but it was always, and I never actually felt like I didn't want to be in any of the point of views. But like I definitely, it's like when you read a Game of Thrones, it's like there are definitely ones that you just like a little bit more. I don't think any of them are like necessarily bad, but it's like we could get back to the one that I like really like. That'd be great, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like this now. I don't know. Maybe maybe one day I'll get to interview him when I ask him this question. But like, I don't know. I feel like this was the main story. I agree. Out there, with them, like, because the other ones, I don't know. They were fun, but like, they didn't feel like they like had any kind of.
They were like they're like the B plot of a TV show, right? Like you have the main thread, and it's not that the B plot's not important or you don't care about it, but it's the B plot for a reason.
For a reason, there's no heart behind that. This is the heart of the story, right?
Yeah, that's how I felt. Very similar to that.
But I mean, and you start getting really enmeshed with them too. Like our, the further on it goes, like Archimedes starts a family with another Delton. He's having children. Like, I mean, he's like in his later years by the end of the book.
Yeah.
I don't remember if he died, but I don't think he does.
No, I don't think so.
Original book?
No, Archimedes.
Oh, Archimedes. No, I don't believe he dies at the end of the first book.
But he's definitely no longer the little bright-eyed, bushy-tailed little tyke he was at the start.
Yeah.
Well, that's what he even says. He's like, when he drops him off with the flint, all the new flint pieces, and he's like, this kid's gonna get laid. He's like I love that. I just love that he's like still referencing, like he's like, I feel you, brother. Like I know, like, and like he could just, it would be like you're a god. Like you're like, okay, this guy's smart. He's young. I'm giving him resources. Like, we know what's coming down the road for this guy as long as I keep him alive. Like, it's almost like Archimedes had a little bit of something, a little bit of intelligence, right? But then Bob made him the chosen one. He's like, I am going to keep you alive to, build up your intelligence so that you can pass on. And he even talked about, he's like, well, how to forget how he found out, but he found out that there was more of that, like the DNA of I don't know, a smart gene or something. He figured out that not just Archimedes had. So people must have done this before. And that was a cool like side thing where he was trying to figure out the history of where these people came from and all that. I thought that was one of the cooler aspects of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, any of the stuff with the Deltons, and I think one thing that also helps with the Deltons is even though we have different characters, they all are still a Bob, right? And the Deltons are like actually an outside character from Bob, so they do feel alien, not just for being aliens, but because it's such a different view and thought process that we're getting from the rest of the books, because it's so much Bob. And even though they're different, they're still Bob, but to have like the Deltons and them be so different, I think just helps pump them up to a point that like really like sticks with you as a reader.
Well, yeah, and I like how he kind of helps them come up with strategies to defeat the Grilloids. Where he's like, if you can just try to straighten that stick out, that might be pretty, and then it kind of goes through the montage of like, oh, then, and then it ends with them one of them throwing a stick, and it like sticks in the back of them, and then I love how he does capture the descriptions of how people would act when they did things for the first time that were great. Like he's like, half of them were looking at each other, the other half were high fiving. Like,
Yeah.
And
the whole time that's going on, you know that in the background he's just thinking, okay, how do I tell them about a spear without telling them about a spear?
Yeah.
How do I help them without creating it myself?
Still trying to play coy with the not interfering too much, but still just doing it anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's kind of how you talked about earlier, Tom, where, I think Archimedes even says at one point, he goes, "You've thrown a lot at us, Bob. We might need to slow down." Because Bob was like, "You need to do this." Because like when like the Grilloids were like, like, "We need to get you out of here," and he threw like 7 concepts at him. He's like, "Please, like, slow down. We can barely do the throwing sticks."
Well, that also that kind of harkens back to why the Prime Directive is such an important thing. Like, he's really, really trying to push these guys down the same path that humanity took, like step for step. And I mean, I for one don't really care. I'd do the same thing, but I can understand the other side of it, where it's like, well, they could, like we were talking about before. Can you conceptualize things you've never, like the unknown? Like you need to think about it, and like sometimes you need to stumble into a path, because hell, they could have thought of something better, maybe.
Yeah,
you never know.
Yeah, they may evolve differently than we're used to, and so yeah, absolutely.
Now, I was half expecting him to bring the throwing sticks, and one of them to go, he's like, "Here, throwing stick," and the Deltans get it, and they go, "Will that do that?" Talking about the explosion, and he's like, no, it won't. He goes, "Well, give us that thing."
Well, they even said, when he and that's another cool concept was the translator, how it like, and I like that just because Bob is a super advanced AI, he can't just come down and immediately like read. He had to keep building. He had to keep building out models throughout the time, and then he's like, "Oh, I think I finally cracked it where we can kind of talk," and but they couldn't conceptualize certain things, so they called the busters the flying rocks or something like that. Right. I just like that concept where it's like, yeah, he was thinking about what primitive people would call certain things.
Yeah, no, I think it is, and I will say, and I think one thing throughout this entire book that it does well is it goes right on that line of being too into the weeds of the sci-fi, like actual science of some of the stuff. Like, there are some authors who would have taken that concept and gone, like how Tolkien had Elvish as a language and decided to Lord of the Rings. Like, there would have been somebody, like a linguist person, who would have been like, this is how we would have actually communicated with a species we don't, and you'd have 75 pages of textbook manuscript, where in this instead we get the fun, lighthearted version of okay, you guys realize you're smart enough to know oh, this has to be built out, but we don't need every single detail of what's going on. I think that's super well done. And the things you're talking about where they wouldn't have the conceptual, the idea of specific things, that's where some of that humor and levity comes back to it, because obviously this is a fun, very lighthearted series with some in-depth concepts over and over again. And I think that blend just works so well.
Well, yeah, I think, the end of the book is two things, in my opinion is he definitely was setting this up to be a series. The way it ends, it's okay, that, I've heard and after I finished it, I watched a few reviews, and some people were some people the only bad thing is there was no kind of real solid ending, but it was a short book. So it was it's kind of, it's okay, we, it's going to be a series, I'm definitely reading the next book. but then also he got the the ships started going. Like that was kind of how it ended. And I was like, you know what? Like this has been kind of a more lighthearted. I mean, there were some battles and some weird, and some concepts that could get dark if you let them. But like at least the the end of the book on a kind of a we're going out to stars, and it kind of makes you want to be like, oh, what's next? So like how now have all of you been into? Have you read all the books, or where's everybody at?
Yeah, I'm caught up.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I read book 5 on day one as soon as it came out.
Yeah, I did as well. It was a day
Yeah.
one
Killing
for
it.
me. Yeah.
So, Joe, I'm not far from you, man. I'm about halfway through the second book. Other things dropped, and I didn't have it on Audible, so I had to keep using the old, like, some bullshit Android, audiobook app when I was first getting into them. So now I'm going to get them from Audible. It'll be a lot easier to keep track of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, how quickly did you guys jump into the next book? Was it like immediate? Like, were you marathoning them or?
Let's see.
Tom's like, let me tell you.
Yeah,
I
Tom's
got
got
the
his list.
spreadsheet.
Yeah. Date. Do you have the time down as well? The date and time?
So I read the next 2, it looks like, within a month.
Nice.
Yeah.
I read them a few months apart, the first 3. And then I think it was about a year before I read book 4. And then like I said, book 5 was release day. So
Yeah, I think when I finished book 3, book 4 wasn't out yet. And then I read book 4 on like release day. And then same thing with book 5. I read, it like as soon as it came out.
Nice.
Yeah. So
yeah. So do these books get quite a bit bigger, or does he keep them relatively short?
they're about the same, I would say.
book 4 is a little bit longer, I think.
Okay.
Like it's the outlier, but for the most part, they're all like on the shorter side. Even the book 4, even though it is longer, is not like a super, super long book.
Yeah. I've been running into that with a lot of the series I'm getting into. It's like, oh, the first book's like 400 pages. You're like, yeah, that's nice. And then like book 6 is 850 pages. I'm like, what are we doing here?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It's a good story, but why you gotta sneak that up on me like that?
Yeah.
See, I don't care if it's something good. I just consume. I'm like a literary locust. Just give me.
Yeah. Nice.
All right, guys. Well, what's everybody got going on here? Tom, you got anything coming up on the channel, or what are you reading after this?
Okay, so I am currently I'm about to start. Speaking of books that got longer with each one, is the Lonesome Crown by Brian Lee Durfee. That's the last. Yeah, it's the last one in his trilogy. So I'll be starting that. I have to finish one more book, and then I'll get to that. I'm also reading Discovery right now by Talking Story.
That's so good.
J.A.J. Minton. So I just started. Like I'm like 5 pages into it. So those are 2, and then coming up on the channel, I owe everybody a what is it? House of Chains review still.
Oh,
so
okay.
I need to do that still. Yeah.
Nice. Chaz, what can the people expect? What do you got going on?
Well, I've got a couple of things. I'm in the middle of 3 books right now. I'm reading first book in the Sun Eater, Empire of Silence. I'm reading A Drop of Corruption, which is book 2 in Shadows of the Leviathan by Robert Jackson Bennett. Loving that series. That's like a Holmes and Watson mystery fantasy. It's really good.
Nice.
And then I'm also reading Dragonhaven by Robin Hobb. So second book in the Rainwild Chronicles. So I've got 3 of those going, and those are all pretty chunky boys. And then I've got so I'll have some book reviews coming out on the channel. I've got a book coming out on Tuesday, or not a book, a video coming out Tuesday about how reading has changed and is changing potentially. So yeah, a few things in the pipeline here.
And Nathan, what are you reading after this? Or what are you? Are you still on Carl?
No. I'm done. I caught up with that. I'm going through the current depression that comes from finishing that. In the meantime, I'm probably going to hop back into the rest of the Bobs, unless you can, convince me to hop into one of the few that you keep recommending.
Eventually, I'll get you to read some of these other ones, but yeah, I'll probably get to the next Bob. Well, the next thing I'm reading is Red Rising, and then Expeditionary Force, which is I'm going to figure out exactly how it's linked to the Bobverse. I've seen somebody said something about the Bobs may have created the Bobs might be the old ones from the X Force, but I don't know. But
Wow. Okay.
book 18 in Expeditionary Force is coming out at the end of the month, so that'll be a first day read, and all those books are chunkers too. God, they're like 18-20 hours every single one of them. I'm like, but thank you guys for hopping on here and following our journey through the Bobverse. I don't always feel this way, but I feel this way about this series. That I know you, Tom, you said you loved the first one, but I feel like these are going to get better. And for at least from what I see, I want to see how they build out the world. I think that's my most interesting thing.
Yeah, they're the next so I think I just have a soft spot for the first one. That's why it's so high up there. But the next couple, it's not like they're far behind in my rankings. So they're all great. And I bet if I reread them, that order might switch. But there's just something about that first one that just I think captures the magic so well.
Special, yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I think I have it as my favorite. But they're all good. None of them are bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Totally.
Well, I cannot wait to get into it, and we'll see you guys in the next one.